The Axiom of Self, by Rogenduranilla. Chapter 1. The seminar room at the Institute for Advanced Existential Studies had the familiar scent of aged paper and polished oak, a fragrance born of decades of ideas fermenting within its walls. Afternoon light filtered through tall windows, spilling over the long mahogany table where 20 doctoral candidates sat, each with a notebook open, pens poised. There was a low thrum of intellectual energy in the air, like static before a storm, but at its center, there was only silence. Professor Eleanor Vance stood at the lectern, her posture impeccable, yet her gaze unfocused. Her eyes, which in past lectures had cut cleanly through tangles of theory and contradiction, now wandered, not scanning the room, but drifting inward, as though tracing some hidden passageway in the mind that she had not walked in years. The semester's theme was one she had defended and refined over decades of research: self-respect as a foundational axiom of human consciousness. Yet today, the idea sat before her not as an elegant theorem, but as a mountain, its summit hidden in cloud, its slopes steep with doubt. Dr. Alastair Finch shifted in his seat, the subtle rasp of wool against wood breaking the stillness. His beard was neatly trimmed, his brow carved with lines of habitual skepticism. He had once said that Vance's early writings on the phenomenology of self-awareness had given him a compass when the map of psychology seemed useless. Now, seeing her hesitate, he felt an unfamiliar unease. The students, future academics, clinicians, and philosophers, stared back in disciplined patience. They had seen Vance dismantle dense philosophical texts with precision and reassemble them into living frameworks that breathed. Today, however, the loom of her intellect seemed still, the shuttle frozen mid-throw. Finally, she stirred. Her voice emerged not with its usual measured certainty, but with a softness that carried the weight of something unspoken. "For years," she began, her gaze sweeping across the semicircle of expectant faces, "I have argued that self-respect is not a derivative emotion, not the byproduct of praise, status, or achievement, but an irreducible truth of human being. An axiom, if you will, upon which the architecture of a healthy psyche must rest." The concept was not new to them. Many had built seminar papers around it, some had even critiqued it fiercely. But there was a tremor in her tone, not weakness, exactly, but the gravity of a question that had grown heavier in the asking. "We have traced its role in resilience, in moral decision-making, in recovery from trauma," she continued, her fingers unconsciously sketching loops and arcs on the worn surface of the lectern. "We have studied its developmental emergence, its cultural variability, its neuropsychological correlates. And yet," she paused, letting the unfinished thought linger like a shadow, "can self-respect ever be proven? Or is it something that, by its nature, belongs to the realm of the unprovable, grasped not through measurement, but through an inner apprehension as certain as it is incommunicable?" Dr. Anya Sharma, sharp-eyed, quick-tongued, and never hesitant to challenge authority, leaned forward. "Professor Vance," she began, her voice carrying a respectful edge, "the history of our field is littered with concepts once treated as self-evident, only to be unraveled and reframed. Could what we call self-respect not be the cumulative effect of early attachments, internalized norms, and our ongoing self-evaluation? In other words, a construct, not an axiom?" Vance nodded slowly, as if weighing not just the question but its undertow. "It's a compelling point," she said. "Developmental psychology offers rich accounts of how secure attachment fosters a sense of worth. Sociocultural perspectives reveal how norms and hierarchies shape self-perception. Cognitive models trace how beliefs sustain or erode our sense of value." Her eyes lifted, locking on Sharma. "But even so, does not the very capacity to internalize, to self-evaluate, to respond to early experiences presuppose some locus of self? A perceiving, interpreting, reacting I to which these layers adhere? Before the social scripts, before the attachment bonds, before the first external praise or criticism, is there not something already there? An original recognition of one's own dignity, however faint?" What followed was not so much a Q&A as a collision of frameworks. Descartes' cogito met Husserl's transcendental ego. Maslow's hierarchy collided with Rogers' unconditional positive regard. Finch suggested that neuroimaging might one day map the neural architecture of self-respect across development. Sharma countered with the inescapable gap between subjective experience and brain scans. Others drew on Buddhist non-self, African Ubuntu, and indigenous philosophies, each reframing the question through their own disciplinary and cultural lens. Vance listened, intervening not to dictate conclusions, but to sharpen the questions. Gradually, the melancholy in her demeanor gave way to the fire of discourse, the joy of a mind in motion. Self-esteem, she said at one point, is often contingent on comparison or achievement. Self-worth is easily tied to others' valuations. Self-compassion offers grace in the face of pain, but self-respect is different. It is the quiet affirmation of one's dignity without needing a reason. It asks for no witness, no proof, no victory. It simply is. By the time the clock struck 6, the air was thick with unresolved arguments. The central question remained unanswered, perhaps unanswerable, yet the room was alive with the thrill of wrestling a mystery that would not yield. That evening, Vance sat alone in her office. The lamplight pooled over books stacked in precarious towers. On her desk lay a blackened white photograph, herself at 22, eyes bright with the hunger of first discovery. She wondered, had that young woman felt self-respect because she was chasing knowledge, or had she chased knowledge because she had always felt, deep down, that she was worth the pursuit? The only sound was the steady ticking of an antique clock. She thought of the day's debate, of the word axiom. In mathematics, an axiom is not proven, it is accepted, a foundation upon which the rest is built. Perhaps self-respect was the same, not the prize at the end of a chain of reasoning, but the ground from which reasoning itself could rise. Her fingers brushed the photograph. The axiom of self, she knew, could never be settled in an experiment or a journal article. It could only be lived, tested in the crucible of one's own being, and perhaps that was enough. Some truths, she thought, were not made stronger by proof, only by the quiet, unwavering fact of their endurance. The antique clock in Professor Vance's office ticked on, each second an audible punctuation mark in the solitude. She had been staring at the photograph for so long that her own younger face now seemed like that of a stranger. Someone she might have met at a conference decades ago, admired, and then lost touch with. The question she had posed to her students still hung in the air of the room, unvoiced yet insistent. Is self-respect something we are given, or something we arrive with? Her eyes drifted to the bottom corner of the photograph, where a faint crease cut across the image like a scar. She remembered when it had happened, a careless fold while packing hurriedly for a train ride to Boston in the early 1980s, when her career was still in its first uncertain climb. She'd been carrying not just lecture notes, but the unspoken weight of proving herself in a male-dominated department. Back then, she had assumed self-respect was something she had to earn, brick by brick, through achievement. Now, decades later, she wasn't so sure. She rose from her chair, the floorboards underfoot groaning in mild protest. The lamplight caught the spines of her books, Aristotle, Kant, Beauvoir, Hooks, and then the file boxes beneath them, where papers from another life were kept in neat, untouched stacks. Inside those boxes were letters from her father, handwritten in an elegant, slightly uneven script. He had been the first to tell her, without explanation or demand, that her life had value simply because it was hers. She had not opened those letters in years. A sudden gust rattled the window pane, and with it came the familiar pull of memory, not the tidy, chronological kind, but the sort that emerges unbidden, weaving the past into the present without warning. She sank back into her chair, one hand resting on the box. If she was going to understand the axiom of self, truly and fully, she realized she would have to step outside the safety of theory and into the raw terrain of her own life. And that meant beginning with the year everything had fractured, the year self-respect had felt most fragile, and yet, somehow, had not disappeared. She drew the first letter from the box. The paper was brittle at the edges, the ink faded but still legible. She unfolded it slowly, as though the words might change if handled too quickly. The clock ticked on. The first line read, "Eleanor, you must remember this above all else. The world will try to tell you what you're worth. Don't let it." Her father's voice came rushing back, deep, calm, with that peculiar mix of firmness and gentleness that could make even a reprimand feel like a blessing. She could almost see him at the kitchen table of their old house, the early morning light cutting across his face as he wrote. She read on, each sentence pulling her further into a part of herself she had kept locked away, even from the students she had mentored so carefully. This was not philosophy in the abstract. This was the living root from which her life's work had grown. And she knew, with a clarity that startled her, that to answer her own question about the unprovable truth of self-respect, she would have to follow these letters like a breadcrumb trail back to the beginning.